If your husband neglects you, what do? Upper-class women in the Heian period thought of a clever way to solve this problem: visiting a temple. Pilgrimages to temples were an important part of a noble woman's life. Besides a little positive bump in karma, women visited temples for 4 main reasons, and there was a possible 5th reason, a scandalous reason they kept all hush-hush that I'll tell you about afterwards. The first reason women went on pilgrimages was to fix relationship problems, and it actually worked pretty often. Now, if you're thinking relationship drama is an awfully minor thing to have to call upon the gods for, then I would invite you to try forgetting Valentine's Day and see if your girlfriend doesn't call God's name in vain on your best friend's bed. Relationships were even more important for Heian noblewomen. Failing a marriage meant you failed yourself, your family, and your clan. Why? Because a woman's entire life was based around marriage and popping out bebes. She had to marry a talented man who could climb the government career ladder, and she had to birth a few kids to continue the family. Unfortunately, the Heian marriage system made it super dangerous for women. Marriage was like an old man's balding head. It could get kind of fuzzy. This was an official Heian marriage certificate. That's right, it didn't exist. Legal papers? Who needs them? A couple was seen as married if a man visited a woman enough times for their friends to go, "They've sure been hanging out a bunch. I guess they're an item now." A man could pull this move with multiple women, collecting wives like Pokemon. The only thing stopping him was the desire for some peace and quiet. Divorce was even simpler. If a man got tired of his wife, he just stopped visiting her, and boom, instant divorce. Secondary wives were always hanging by a thread. Main wives usually lived with their husbands, but secondary wives almost always lived apart, so their husbands could divorce them and not even have to go through all the trouble of moving out. It's no shocker that secondary wives visited temples like they had season passes, always needing marriage support. Now, how could visiting a temple possibly fix a marriage? Well, in modern times, if a husband is acting up, his wife can always smack him with a frying pan. But back in Heian days, they had to be more delicate. Here's an example of a woman who knew what she was doing. A court lady had recently become a secondary wife to a man she thought was pretty neat. Love is like a beautiful flower. Before you know it, it'll wither to nothing. Her husband soon began to visit her less. She knew this was the beginning of a paragraph that ended in, "It's not you, it's me," so she sprang into action. Our Lady prepared to go on a pilgrimage, which meant she had to purify her body for a few days. Her husband wasn't yet at the stage where he stopped visiting her altogether. When he tried to come over, her servants turned him away. She was in the middle of purification. Sex would have soiled all that purity. Her husband got the message. She mad. He also got annoyed. And after she got back from the temple, he absolutely let her have it. All the attention that she wanted. Her plan worked like a charm from a temple. Later in their marriage, the guy again reverted to his habit of seeing her less and less, and again she set off on a week-long pilgrimage. Absence made his heart not wander, and the husband sent her a love letter, which pleased the lady. So yes, pilgrimages helped because they could be used for attention. It was an excuse to give your husband the silent treatment, and to withhold that ultimate bargaining chip, sex. Women also prayed for their husbands to regain interest in them, but the effectiveness of this method remains unclear. Pilgrimages also made men embarrassed. Nothing terrifies the powerful more than the idea of becoming the butt of a joke. Fujiwara no Kaneye was a man who constantly suffered from altitude sickness because he was so high up in the government ladder. A really accomplished person in court. But at home, man's neglecting his wife like credit card payments. So one day, without telling him, his wife headed off to a temple, and the only thing she left behind for Kaneye was a huge problem. He was in terrible danger of his peers going, "Hey, did you hear about Kaneye? Kaneye even controlled his wife, a secondary wife no less." Losing face was not pretty. This was such a hit to his status and dignity that Kaneye, one of the most important men in court, actually went to the temple himself and begged her multiple times to come back. Seeing her husband trying so hard to repent, she was finally convinced and decided it was time to twist the knife and refuse him, making the hole of embarrassment he was digging so deep he might as well have buried himself in it. There was even a rumor that she had become a nun, a rumor I'm betting she started herself. She only finally agreed to go home after her father's request. But then she decided to accompany her father on another pilgrimage. Luckily, Kaneye took this news with the grace of a noble gentleman and barged in while they were preparing for the trip and went into this demon rage, knocking over incense, throwing prayer beads around, and being quite nobly obnoxious. His wife found this argument unconvincing and went on the trip anyway. Of course, the pilgrimage tactic could backfire. If a wife visited a temple, but her husband kept on ignoring her like nothing happened, she'd eventually have to come home, with her own face nowhere to be found. After getting a husband, a woman could then set her sights on the main goal of a Heian woman's life. It was also a second reason women went on pilgrimages: childbirth. A woman's purpose in the family was to have a kid, any kind of kid. Sons could become heirs, but daughters were also important. A child was raised in the mother's family home, so you could marry your daughter into a powerful family, maybe even the imperial family, and raise her child in your own home, giving you influence over the next generation. For example, the Fujiwara clan did this a lot. Children are great. All that love and affection a mother feels when she sees her bebe for the first time was nothing compared to what the kid can do for her socially. Having a child meant her husband was more likely to stick around, her family could gain influence, and she had some decent power over her husband. It's no surprise that women often went on pilgrimages to pray for a child. And as women got older, and as their biological clocks started ticking louder than Big Ben, they went on more and more pilgrimages. You could see the desperation in their calendars. And if biology refused to cooperate, a woman might adopt a child. Having a kid really did encourage husbands to stay. One noble joked, "I had just about decided to stop coming here, and now to have a pretty little thing like this turn up." That was a long time ago though. Today, I wouldn't recommend telling your husband you're pregnant to get him to come back. You should do it after the kid comes out. If a bebe was overdue, women went to temples to pray for an eviction. Some ladies even gave birth at temples, hoping the good spiritual vibes would help her labor go smoothly. Now, studies show it's hard to have a child when you're dead. So the third reason women went on pilgrimages was to cure an illness. Everyone visited temples for this, but there were illnesses that affected women more, like being possessed by a spirit and pregnancy complications. What did it mean to be possessed by a spirit? The superstition community is not clear on this one. It could be anything. Sometimes a cough that doesn't go away would count. If the sick person could travel, she would visit the temple in person. If she had a cold, then this was very beneficial. Not for her, but for the cold and the monks. What an ingenious business model. The cold might spread to other temple goers, and the monks got repeat customers as sick visitors came back to cure their colds. The fourth reason for going on a pilgrimage was what everyone thinks would be the main reason, but it really was the least popular: salvation after death. Everyone cared about the afterlife, they just cared about the current life a lot more. It was mostly old women who prayed for rebirth in the Buddhist paradise. People looked at you weird if you were a young woman doing it. Why? Well, noble ladies had a life cycle. A cycle that is super clear if you look at why they went on pilgrimages and when. Young girls went to pray for a good husband. A bit later in life, women prayed for a child, then for safe delivery, then for fixing their marriage. Then, only when they were old or sick, when they already had children and secured their future, did most women hit the temples to pray for salvation after death. Pretty clear that the court lady's life cycle revolved around marriage and giving birth. It was common for old noble women at the end of their lives to trade in their stylish silk kimonos for ugly-ass nuns' robes and retire from the world, boosting their odds of scoring tickets to paradise. But for women who still had responsibilities in this world, the next best thing was to go on a pilgrimage and put society temporarily on airplane mode. Now, there was maybe a fifth motive for pilgrimages. Temples were holy places where people prayed and denied the impure desires of the body, making them really hot places for romance. We're not supposed to talk about what I'm wearing. Yes, baby, tell me more about what we're not supposed to say. Buddha isn't real? Oh gods, you naughty girl. Nowadays, we have typical boy meets girl and falls in love stories. Heian Japan had typical boy meets girl and falls in love on a pilgrimage stories. A common storyline went like this. A beautiful girl lives near a mountain temple. She meets a nobleman who's on a pilgrimage. He catches feelings faster than you can catch a cold at a temple, and takes her back to the capital, where she enters the glamorous world of the imperial palace. This suggests that pilgrimages may have been a good way to hook up with someone new, or meet up with a lover. It makes sense. Even today, when you're on vacation, you're feeling good, everything's new, your husband is home, you're more likely to fall for that cute guy or girl you meet. Whatever happens on vacation stays on vacation, and if it doesn't, there's always abortion. In the capital, women were always indoors. They were not supposed to be seen, but at a temple, much more likely to see a woman, or at least her sleeves. We can already see that religion wasn't usually on top of people's minds. If you read the diaries of pilgrims, they wrote a lot about sightseeing and adventure. They treated pilgrimages a lot like vacations, so why not take the opportunity to sip the tea of some fellow Heian travelers? Or a pilgrimage romance could have been nothing more than a story trope, who knows? That's not to say that romance wasn't a big part of Heian culture. Walking around the imperial court was challenging because you had to dodge all the love letters flying back and forth between couples. And yes, there was lots and lots of cheating. Click here to see what that was like and why everyone expected their partners to cheat. We have a new emperor on Patreon today, Victoria. I am victorious thanks to you. We also have some regular patrons, Drew Armstrong, Spicy Bean, delicious, Avery, and Winged Icarus. Thanks so much, you guys. Alright, I love you and spread the knowledge.